Hi, and thank you for joining me, Sandra, your parent and self-leadership coach with Self-Bound Solutions. And I just want to take a few moments and just discuss a little bit more this term I've coined called parental wisdom. And it's a term I've used through my website. I use it in the newsletters I write weekly, in the social media posts that I put up, and it's definitely in the language I use with my clients. And for me, parental wisdom is the humility to recognize that in working on our vulnerabilities and working on our flaws and our own inner critics, we will unlock our abilities to access our inner wisdom. The wisdom to go beyond judgment, doubt, fear, stress, the things that tend to rear its ugly head. We're in the midst of those challenging parenting moments. And so this means parenting from a place that involves constant practice and training. And it's practice and training of our own self-awareness. And I like to think of this as practicing our self-awareness muscle, because it is like training our bodies for whether we go to the gym or for anything else that we want to do, whether it's a marathon, etc. It's every day, it's step by step, it's from one stressor to the other. It's really about getting connected to how we're showing up so that we start to really fully learn how to connect, how to engage, and how to communicate with our children in a way that then pulls out their best, right? It's really a focus and an attention around shifting gears and not just about how our child is or isn't doing something, how they are or are not talking to us, but rather about us and our self-leadership. And that's another term that I use quite a bit in my language with clients and the other communication that I do, whether again, my newsletters, my website, etc. And our self-leadership is so key in how we parent, so much so that I really think that's the driving force to really change the game here, to really change the dynamics of what our home looks like, of what our home feels like, of how our home behaves, and really tapping into what we're capable of as parents so that we encourage our children's capabilities to be their best self. So that's a little bit about parental wisdom. I hope it's given you a little bit more to think about. And I look forward to connecting with you next time. And reach out to me with Sandra at selfbalancedsolutions.com. Hi, and welcome everyone. This is Sandra, your parent and self-leadership coach. Thank you for joining me on another conversation. And today is going to be about Star Wars and parenting and how I've been using Star Wars in our home to talk about, to reinforce, and to make relevant and relatable the messages around being mindful, about being conscious, and using self-control. If your child or children is anything like my oldest, who's just about to turn 7, and his birthday party is going to be a Star Wars theme, wouldn't have it any other way, then you know that Star Wars, if that's the case in your home, is all the rage. And I literally had one of those moments because my son has a collection that we got him, a series of the book and of how the movies have unfolded. And he's had the book as his introduction to Star Wars before he even saw any of the movies. And over the Thanksgiving break, we actually allowed him to watch the original 70s first 3 Star Wars, which I guess is episode 4, 5, and 6. And before all this, I didn't really have much of an interest or really totally got or understood what Star Wars is all about. But as a mother of a son who is all about it, I took the interest and the initiative to check it out and really understand it. And back to the books, we were reading together one night at bedtime not too long ago, about a couple of months ago. And he, we were talking about, and he's all about Jedi Master Yoda, as he says, because he gives the whole full name. And he's all about him and how he works and his powers of the Force. And we were reading the books, and I had kind of this aha awakening moment about how the concept, the idea that is infused within Star Wars is in fact all about mindfulness. It really is about using the mind, controlling it in a way that works for you, that is for good. And so because I do some meditation with my son, I was able to connect also many dots with him about how Yoda is so powerful because he uses the Force, and the Force is really the universe. It is consciousness. It is the ability to be connected, to be aware, to really understand that we are one with everything else and everything is one with us. And it is that power of consciousness, again, that power of awareness that makes Yoda really so special. And so as him and I have talked about it, I really used that language to really be relatable so that he's able also to practice in those moments of his own stress or outbursts on how to access the power that he has for self-control, to redirect where his energy goes, to redirect rather going to the dark side, as we talk about, because the dark side is also all about the ego. It's about selfishness. It's about a very narrow perspective. It is about unconsciousness because it's about self-driven, self-control, motivated by fear, which is a huge piece. And so much of what I talk about in our parenting, as we raise our self-awareness, as we raise our consciousness, as we raise our self-leadership to really connect to these higher levels of what we are truly capable of when we're able to be grounded. I think one of the most awesome and visual moments that Star Wars is able to give, as I talk about it with my son and we relate to it, is those moments that the Jedi, be it Yoda or others, are in the midst of a battle or some, really intense engagement. And you can see them, in order to be at their most aware, at their most focused, at their most optimal performance, they are able, you see them in kind of like the movies, collect themselves, right? And they're able to pause and sense and get grounded with the here and with the now while everything else kind of in visual motion is happening around them, but they're able to stay focused, they're able to stay calm, because mindfulness is about staying calm despite the energies that surround, because it's connected to you. And to be able then to access your internal wisdom of what is the best next move, the best next decision that's going to create or provide an outcome that is much more favorable. So I really have come to love, I've come to enjoy, funny enough and totally unexpectedly, Star Wars and this really deeper foundational message of consciousness, of awareness, that I think really is in so much alignment with and attuned to how we are in this age and stage. We're amidst this awakening, I think, collectively of folks that I speak with, things that I see, things that people are paying attention to about this concept and this idea of how to be more centered, how to be grounded, how to be mindful, between your big CEOs, whether it's at Google or whether it's your athletes when it comes to performance or even when it comes to parenting. There is this theme that connects all of us, and is this theme of getting connected and grounded to these wisdom and ancient traditions that remind us and that teach us about our ability to tap into our power, the ability to tap into our true potential. And that is really about connecting with our consciousness, with our awareness, being really mindful in a day-to-day moment on what our choices are and that we are in control. and that we have the ability that in that moment when we're able to be like the Jedi, kind of pause, and as the chaos is happening all around us, to really center and connect with your true power and ability, your self-leadership. I think it's beautiful, and I've been so excited to almost kind of discover this with myself and my son. In the ability that Star Wars, funny enough, who would have known, has been able to play this really awesome role. And we've used it together, him and I, in moments as where he's been challenged with something, and even talk about why is a Jedi able to do X, Y, Z, right? Because he's able to stay focused. He's able to breathe, take a couple of breaths, take a step back, gain perspective, and look at the bigger picture. And so it's been a really excellent way, again, to use his language, to use something that he's really excited and passionate about, and to have that woven into our conversations, to have that woven into those learning moments, both for myself and for him, as we learn constantly every day and practice what we preach. And I think this is, again, just a really neat opportunity to use something that if your child or children are gung-ho about everything Star Wars, it's such a unique opportunity for us as a parent or parents to leverage that in a way that can be so positive, that can be so incredibly productive, because it really is a true essential message that underlines, the bigger story, that underlies kind of the commercialism of what is Star Wars. But if you take a step back and deconstruct it as the adult, there is really great wisdom to be used. And of course, as a benefit and side effect, my daughter, who is right in there with what we read and chimes in on things, even though she's not as excited about Star Wars, she's able to get the message and really connects those dots as well. And she'll use those examples, whether it's of Yoda or the Jedi or the Dark Force. It's just really neat. And I'm smiling as I talk about it because there's so many examples in my head of how we've used that as we've played, as we've talked about stuff. You can really be creative and have a lot of fun with it. And so I welcome you to do the same. And feel free to share with me how it plays out in your home. I'd love to hear it. And I'll keep you tuned in as well. Enjoy your week and your weekend, most especially, as this is your weekend boost for a couple more tips and ideas of how to empower your parenting and just doing it differently in a way that speaks to you, that motivates you, and it brings you to a higher level of your own self-awareness, of your own self-leadership, of your own consciousness. Be well. I hope to hear from you soon, and I'll speak to you next weekend. Take care. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is Sandra Pradas Martin, your parent and self-leadership coach with Self-Balance Solutions. And I'm creating this message for you today because I've actually been asked by folks to offer a little bit more tools and approaches on how to, in the moment, in the midst of an outburst, a tantrum that our child is doing, and the way it's triggering us, how to really apply being a more self-balanced parent, to be a more positive, conscious, aware, mindful in our approach. So I decided to actually use a very real personal family experience that we had over the summer that was kind of a very heightened example of my daughter having an outburst, having a tantrum, being super reactionary. And so the scenario is that we were on family vacation. We did a lot of swimming, a lot of fun in the pool, which was resulting in both my children, actually. My son is 6, my daughter's 4.5, soon to be 5. And they started to kind of tug and pull at their ears, and they both have their own personal histories of ear issues. And so my husband and I are very clued into the signs of maybe something more going on with their ears. And so we wanted to have it checked out because, again, vacation's going to end and we need to be up on a plane, and it's even worse to be on a plane with an infection. So we decided to go to the local kind of hospital clinic. Now, my daughter was absolutely not okay with this. She was super resistant, defiant. about going there and being there, even more so than my son. And so what I needed to do is I needed to really tap into my own kind of higher self, my higher parent, on how to manage this in a way that was going to shift the energy that she was putting out there. Now, I talk a lot about the 7 levels of parenting. And so in these moments of stress, of resistance, of frustration, it is super easy for us to go to kind of our default modes and being super reactionary, kind of meeting the conflict with more conflict, and rather than kind of tapping into or being aware and attuned to the moment in using some of our higher levels of parenting, which would call more upon forgiveness, which called more upon compassion and a more of peace and calm to the scenario. And it's hard to do. I definitely get it. We can very quickly be triggered, but the trigger is our trigger. And so it's practicing in these kinds of examples that I'll be sharing on how to do that. And it's recognizing that feeling coming up for us and intentionally choosing to act differently. And so all along, I was using 2 strategies that mirror our higher parenting levels. And the first is that I talk a lot about is shifting the energy first and doing the problem solving later. Many of us parents are quick to do and go to the fix it problem solving mode because we think that's kind of what we need to be doing and what would work best, when in fact, it's quite the opposite. It only often stirs to agitate and create more conflict because our children are not in that space or place. Think of ourselves when we're in the midst of a conflict or a stressful situation. The last thing we're ready to do is to go in that fix-it problem-solving mode. We need to kind of be in that space and place of frustration and deal with that and shift that out of the picture before we can go into the latter. So that was kind of my call to action as I was starting to really be present and aware that I had many eyes and ears on me, likely judging me, how I was likely judging how I was doing in my own parenting, likely judging my daughter and how she was being very visibly reactionary and resistant and defiant. But my focus and my concentration was in many ways to be forgiving of what was going on, because after all, she's 4.5 years old and her reactions were really more symptomatic of kind of more underlying fear of how she was projecting what was going to happen in the visit, and to be more compassionate and to really create more calm and peace in my own response to her rather than to meet her and have my own adult tantrum, as I like to say. So the first thing I was doing again was shifting the energy first. I was getting down on my knees. I was connecting with her, making as much eye contact as I could with her, and encouraging her to breathe through her anxiety. And the other second thing that I did quite a bit of all throughout was to acknowledge and validate. And I talk a lot about this as well. And the best thing to do in these heightened moments is to acknowledge the situation and then validate the feeling. So acknowledge the situation would be things like, telling my daughter, sweetie, I know this is a different place. I know these aren't our doctors. I know we're on vacation and this is the last thing we want to be doing. Acknowledging that this is unfamiliar, kind of uncomfortable territory, and then validating the emotions around her being scared, nervous, afraid, and that that's normal and that is kind of expected because of this being a different place, a different doctor. And so doing variations of acknowledging and validating all along with trying to shift the energy of her being really scared and angry, and that resistance was really more about that. And just to share with you that all throughout her kind of outbursts, they were so heightened that even the aide to the nurse who was trying to help taking kind of the vitals for her before going to get checked out by the doctor was so taken aback by her reactions, my daughter's reactions, that she even said to me, hey, does your daughter see anybody? Does she get any professional help? And, maybe she should. And I was so surprised that that's the interpretation she was having, that I quickly felt my kind of bear parent self, right? The protective bear that we like to be as moms and dads. I had that bubbling feeling in my stomach, and being attuned and aware of that, I made sure that I didn't attach myself to it, but rather I recognized it. I kind of let it go. And all I said to her, I was like, hey, listen, my daughter is 4.5 years old. We are not from here. We are on vacation. This is not where we come to for, checking out our ears. And what you're seeing is a 4.5-year-old scared. So no, we don't see anybody. This is not who she is. You're seeing a 4.5-year-old who's scared. And that's all I said. And so with that, the woman kind of backed away. I redirected my attention and focus to my daughter. Again, doing all of my approaches of shifting the energy. We even went to the bathroom, giving her kind of a time and space to kind of feel her emotions in a way that was a little bit more protective in the bathroom, so her and I could connect and engage. I even asked her kind of ways that I can support her to make sure that we did get the ears checked out. And she asked if in fact her brother could go first. She asked if in fact she could watch. And so we did exactly that. We went back into the room where the doctor came in, who noticed and saw that she needed her kind of space to be respected, and her brother went first. And so even though she was still resistant and kind of battling this internal feeling of her anger and fear with battling, the techniques of how to calm herself down and kind of take it all in without being so nervous and scared of these projected ideas of what could happen. We kind of sat there. She was on my lap, comforting her in ways that met her and matched her with where she was at, all along being and encouraging my own higher parent, again, kind of offering the compassion and forgiveness of what she was going through and creating a space of more of calm. She finally calmed down. She finally got to a place where she was able to be less resistant and at least get herself checked out, which in fact ended up being she did have an infection and we needed to take antibiotics. And once her perceived fears were unmet, because in fact the appointment did nothing more than just check the ear with the little tool that they check the ear with. And knowing that that's all that happened, we wrapped up the visit and kind of wrapped everything up and back we went to our rooms. And once she was calm, once she was in a place that was comfortable, familiar, a place where she knew that she was done with the doctor's appointment, her and I had a heart-to-heart. And we really talked about what happened. I really took the intention of helping her also build her awareness muscle. Because really at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. It's about taking time to model for our children and to teach them kind of the alternate ways to manage and deal with challenge and stress. Because we all know life is going to give us many of those moments and opportunities to grapple and tackle challenges and stress. And so these are just the small little ways that even for our children at 4, 5, 6, etc. have. And so every moment is a moment of opportunity to think about and see how we can engage that situation differently. I needed to make sure that I was there for her, that I support her, that she can trust me, even though she wasn't trusting of this place, and that she was safe. And so when in our heart to heart, we talked about everything that went on leading up to the visit, what took place throughout the visit, and talked about how actually the visit ended up wrapping up and that, in fact, like I said, her fears were unmet. And then we talked through ways of how we could have possibly, or how she could have possibly managed that differently. And so I share this because even for our children who could be as young as, mine are, they really do have the skills. They are intuitive enough. They are smart enough. They are skilled enough to have these conversations where we can practice their awareness muscle. We can practice with them how to check in with themselves, how to lessen their anxiety, lessen their fears, lessen the stress that is coming up for them. And they can only do that when they've seen that example in us. And so I hope this message was helpful for you. Again, I talk a lot about the 7 levels of parenting and, where we might fall on the day-to-day operations and where we might fall when we're in that stress default mode. And so I wanted to share with you this real life family example of mine, in ways that when we are called in those moments, it can be really tough for us, how we can tap into our higher levels of our parenting, our higher self, to offer a much more engaged, a much more positive, mindful parenting experience, so that at the end of the day, it doesn't have to feel like we went to war, which I know many of us feel when we're met with this conflict and resistance and stress, etc. So I'm here for you. And if you have any thoughts, any questions, please feel free to ask them. And I wish you a great week ahead. And may you continue working on parenting differently and to show up as your best parent. Talk with you soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome again. This is Sandra Pradas Martin, your parent and self-leadership coach. And I want to take a moment to share with you that something that took place with my son not too long ago that really warmed my heart, and I think also was an opportunity to share and emphasize how all the small things that we do during the day, for us who are choosing to more consciously, to more purposefully, to more with intention rather, parent differently, how all those moments snowball into some really great, wonderful moments. And so the other day, my son was really upset and frustrated about something that had took place with some family members. And I hadn't known that it affected him so much that when we came home, he went upstairs and I heard him from a distance crying because he was upset. And so I let him take that moment before I went upstairs. And so I let him, again, be there for a bit. And before I went in and I checked in with him and I asked him if he was up to sharing with me what was making him so upset. And he did. And he sat with me on his bed and he told me what was going on. He shared with me his perspective of what he was interpreting, which is then what made him so upset. And so I took the time to just listen. And let me just say that is a powerful tool for us as parents to just simply listen. I think many of us jump into the box of fix it and problem solving mode, when often one of the most powerful tools in our toolkits as parents is simply to listen without chiming in, but rather just asking questions. And that's what I did, a lot of asking questions, clearing up and clarifying what it is that he was interpreting. And at the same time, offering other interpretations of the situation in order to then, again, in that moment, help open his eyes, open his mind into all the other possibilities that might have been going on, and that the situation may not have exactly meant that one thing that he was interpreting, but many other things. And so that's a really key way as parents in these kinds of moments to help diffuse what it is that is actually going on, and also teach and build that awareness muscle, not only for ourselves, because we have to be good at practicing it, but to teach that awareness muscle of our children, that it's not just one way that something might have gone on. For every story, there's, 2 or 3 or more perspectives or interpretations to it. And so already taking that moment and that time to teach that, so that things don't get taken personally, so things don't get locked in that box of feeling frustrated or resentment, etc. So we took a moment to talk through some of those other possibilities. And even just talking through some of those possibilities, I could already see him kind of relaxing a little bit, not feeling so attached to that one interpretation he was having. And so, we kind of moved on to something different and spent a little bit more time. And then, of course, we never know how a child is, still sitting with something or ruminating in their head, that when it was bedtime, it was my turn, because my husband and I alternate between, my daughter and my son for some quality time. So it was bedtime and I was with him and we were getting settled into bed. And he shared with me, he said, "Mom, I'm still feeling really angry." And I said, okay, that's okay too, to feel upset and to feel angry. And we talked through maybe one or two things we could do the next day. And so that was fine. He was in his bed and we were going to do a little bit of a routine that we do. We always do a gratitude practice every night. And he wasn't up for it. He wasn't in the mood. He said, Mommy, I don't want to. I said, okay, that's fine too. And on his own, this is what really warmed my heart. On his own, I saw him just kind of breathing really calmly, really slowly with long breaths. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to interrupt his flow. I didn't want to interrupt his own method of what seemed to be him needing to kind of calm himself down and calm his mind down. So, and it's like somewhat dark in the room, but I could see him like lying down, and he lifted up his fingers a little bit and started counting some of his breaths, and he was just quiet. And he was doing that for a little bit, enough so that I thought it seemed that he had maybe fallen asleep. And as soon as I checked in, he said, no, Mommy, I'm not done yet. So he did it a couple more times. He said, okay, now I'm ready, Mommy, to say what I'm thankful for today. And so that's what we did. And so I was so proud of him, and I wanted to acknowledge that. And I said to him, I said, baby, I have to say, I'm so proud of you for taking the time to breathe through feeling upset and to calm yourself before going to bed so you have a really good night's sleep. And we had a great little kind of night recap, and off we did our routine, and off he went to sleep. Again, it was such a wonderful moment of all the little things that we do as a family, that I do as a parent and as his mom, to redirect off negative emotions or things that get us frustrated, to then take a step back and teach ourselves, to teach our kids how to take control of something and make it work for us rather than against us. And so I wanted to share that with you because I know many folks ask about ways to redirect emotions when they're real, when they're raw, and when they're visibly making our children upset. And so I hope this was a helpful tool. If you have any questions, feel free to share them and ask me either via email or on my Facebook page or in the comments below this video. My email is sandra@selfbalancedsolutions.com. I hope you have a wonderful week. I look forward to the next time. Enjoy.